Hey everybody, welcome to another beautiful day in Vancouver. We had a nice, awesome, sunny day and it wasn't too hot, so it's all good. I thought today I'd talk about things that I don't miss from South Africa because, I spoke about what I miss and all those, but you know what, Sundays are the day when we speak to family. So every Sunday morning we make a cup of coffee, we phone Belinda's dad, we speak to him for half an hour or however long it takes. And then we phone my mom and we phone other people, and Sunday is our connection day. But, there's lots of things that I miss from South Africa, but there's definitely some that I don't. Like, for instance, number one, obviously, and I've touched on that in many videos before, is the security factor. South Africa, you just don't feel safe. Over here, we do. We walk around late at night, we let the kids go out, we've got stuff standing outside. Sometimes we forget to lock the door. It's not serious because we don't feel like we have to look over our shoulders the whole time. And I'm sure there are places in Canada that's a little bit more risky, but where we are fine. There was actually an article recently in the newspaper where they said there was this big study done, and they said that the best thing that you can do in Canada is to just have a little sign that says beware of the dog, because the odd burglar that comes around, he's got so much to pick from that he just wouldn't even try to go to a house that might have a dog. He just doesn't care. In South Africa, they come and they poison your dog so they can get into your house. It's a slightly different story. But there's then also a couple of other things. We spoke to the parents today, and for the last 2 weeks, South Africa has been having what they call load shedding. Now, it is just absolutely ridiculous. So what's happened is, over all the years, the government has severely neglected our power utility, Eskom, which is it's the big power utility. It's a parastatal that it supplies the power for the whole of South Africa. It's a parastatal, it's a government department. And they've implemented, or they introduced the term load shedding quite a few years ago already, I think in 2015 or 2016. And what that is when they don't have enough power for the grid, they do rolling blackouts. They switch the power off for periods of time to save power. So they have these plans where certain areas get switched off at certain times so that other areas can have power. Anyway, and load shedding has been going on for a long time. Like I said, it's probably about 6-7 years now, if not longer. But recently it's gone really, really bad. So the past 2 weeks they were running between stage 2 and stage 6 load shedding. But in any case, long story short, my mom says that where she lives in Joburg, in Lonial. Now, that's kind of an upmarket area of Joburg. Well, not upmarket, but, it's a decent area of Joburg in the middle of Four-Way, Sandton, that area. And they've been having power cuts 3 times a day. So 3 times a day, the power goes off for 2.5 hours or longer at a time. I spoke to people, and that's across the country. Everywhere in South Africa, it seems it's like that. Every single day, you have like between 7.5 and 11 hours of no electricity. And it's just the weirdest time. So what would happen is that from 6 a.m. to 8:30 a.m., there would be no power. Now, can you imagine what that does to an economy or to people? You have to get to work. You get up at 6 a.m. There's no electricity till 8:30. And then again from 3 to 4 or from 4 to 6:30 or whatever. They've got all these weird times where the power goes off, and it is decimating the economy. Small businesses, how do you survive? And then of course there's all the knock-on effects, because what happens is with these power cuts, the government switches it on and off. Not the government, Eskom switches it on and off. Their software just goes. And we all know that electronic equipment does not like being switched on and off the whole time. But it's not only electronic equipment. So fridges, computers, stuff like that are constantly blowing. They're giving up because they don't like being switched on and off 3 times a day just out of nothing. And then of course you have the little power substation. So what I've been hearing is that some of the substations on the in the neighborhoods, they're also not used to, they're also not designed to take that kind of load on, load off, load on, load off the whole time. So now those things are starting to give up, and then the power goes out. My father-in-law says that they didn't have power for 3 days or 2 days constantly last week. Oh, well, that wasn't because the substation blew. That was because one of the other problems in South Africa, like we all know and we've discussed before, is crime. So something that happens quite often in South Africa is they steal the electrical cables. Now, that's generally quite hard because you need to be very careful. You've got a high voltage cable running across. You need to be very careful. You can't just cut it off. But now with the power outages, what happens is there's no electricity, so the guy can walk up with a hacksaw and cut the cable. So what happened last week was, while the power was out, they stole 75 meters of electrical cable, and it was 2 days of no power before they got that set up. Of course, another domino effect of this whole power cut thing is that cell phones stop working, because what happens is all the cell towers have backup batteries, but when the power starts going off for 11 hours a day, there's not enough time to recharge the backup batteries to the point where it can let the cell phones go. So it was last week, our accountant that lives in one of the coastal towns of South Africa, they didn't have any cell connection, nothing. They had to drive to the shopping mall because there's this little shopping center in the town, and it's the only place in town that has a generator, a big generator to run it's the fish factory, not the shopping mall. There's a fish factory, and they have a generator to run the fish factory, and there's a cell tower at the fish factory on the premises. So that one had power, so they would drive up to the fish factory so they can make phone calls, because nothing's designed for that kind of thing. And then, of course, in Joburg itself, my mum was saying that another big problem they have out there in Lone Hill is water, because you've got the aging water infrastructure that has not been looked after, that has not been kept up properly, and now it's starting to fail in a big way. So what happens is you would have water pipes that burst, the government would come out and try and fix it, or the council would come and fix it, but they don't have the funds anymore to do it properly. So they do little patches and it keeps on blowing. I think last week they said 2 or 3 days in the week in the middle of Joburg where they did not have water. So things are, I'm sure it's harsh everywhere else in the world as well, but things are starting to crumble in South Africa in that sense, and it worries me, I mean, I've always been very bullish on South Africa. It's a beautiful country, it's a beautiful place. The people in South Africa are ingenious. They will always figure out something to make stuff work. They can keep things going. But it seems that with the 1-2 punch of COVID and now inflation and world supply chain problems and the war in Ukraine, all of these things are starting to become a little bit much, and I'm worried. I'm worried for the people back there. I'm worried about how do you run a business. My sister and them, they are in the eventing business. They rent out stuff for events, they help organize events, and a lot of the companies just don't do events anymore. They stopped. No more conferences, no more nothing, because they don't know when there will be power. They don't know if everything's going to be working. So, COVID and that also smashed that business. Small businesses out there are struggling because the hairdresser my mom knows, she says, well, the power goes off twice a day for 2.5 hours, and she sends her people home because what's the point? She doesn't have enough money to buy a big generator to keep on running the hairdresser, and at the same time there's no point in paying people to be at work when there's no electricity. And of course now the other problem is they've got this app that's supposed to let you know how the power cuts would work. So it's supposed to to inform you that your power will be off from this time to that time, or from this time to that time. And apparently that's also chaotic. I don't know, that's just from my family's experience. They were saying that, you know, the problem is not that the app is completely wrong, it's that they randomly swap between the different stages of load shedding. So stage 2 is 1 2.5 hour break every 48 hours. Then stage 3, I don't know how it all works, up to stage 6, which is 3 sections in a day in 24 hours, stuff like that. But what happens is all of these schedules change when the level changes. So it's like, oh, this morning it's level 2 or stage 2 load shedding, then the afternoon it's stage 6, and then it's stage 4. So nobody knows what to make of it. It is a little bit of a nightmare. So yeah, it's hard. I mean, we for our people back there, we got generators and backup systems so that they can carry on working, but a lot of them work off of the cell towers, so now that's also starting to become a problem. Anyway, totally off. Sorry for the rant. It's sad. It's just, you know, I spoke to everybody there today, and people are struggling. People are worried. It's not easy. I don't know how everybody else feels about it. I'm sure there's people that are still fine, but it's tough. All right, folks, have a good one. Cheers.